Okay, this is the continued reading of pages 396 to 403. We're on page 400, the parable of the Good Samaritan. A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him and beat him and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down the road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion, and went to him, and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii coins, and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. Which of these 3 do you think proved neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? All right, so that was a story, a teaching story that Jesus had told. All right, Jesus in Jerusalem. Jesus spent perhaps 3 years moving through the countryside, teaching in small towns and villages throughout Galilee. Then he went to Jerusalem for Passover. Jews had to come from all over Judea for the holiday. Many had heard of Jesus and his teachings. They welcomed him eagerly, and some even greeted him as the Messiah. The Jewish leaders watched Jesus carefully. In Jerusalem, he entered the temple, and there he saw agents of the Pharisees selling offerings. Jews entering the temple were supposed to buy an offering to bring to the altar. The money, of course, went to the Pharisees. Jesus knotted a rope as a whip and sent the Pharisees' offerings flying, overturning their tables and saying, My house shall be a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. Many of the Jewish high priests and Pharisees grew alarmed. They were the same men who had been suspicious of the Zealots. They were suspicious of anyone who claimed to be the Messiah. In their minds, Jesus was undermining their leadership by proclaiming a new message from God, one that went beyond the old laws. The Sermon on the Mount. In the Christian Bible, the book of Matthew recounts how Jesus sat down with some of his followers on a high place and taught them about the message he wanted them to spread. His words have come to be known as the Sermon on the Mount. Here is a part of the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Who was this carpenter to tell them they were wrong? They worried that this rabble-rouser was becoming dangerously popular. A small group of Jewish leaders began hatching a plot. On the eve of Passover, Jesus celebrated the traditional supper with his disciples in Jerusalem. According to the Gospels, he broke the bread and blessed the wine and had a long last talk with them. He warned them that something awful was about to happen, that he would suffer, but that something glorious would come of it too. The Gospels say that after supper, Jesus went to a nearby garden to pray. Toward dawn, a crowd of armed men sent by the chief priests appeared and seized him. They hauled him before Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor. The chief priests accused Jesus of trying to break the old laws. They accused him of stirring up the people with his preaching. They said he claimed to be the new king of Judea and that he preached revolt against Roman rule. They cried out that he must be punished. According to the Gospels, the crowds shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate handed over Jesus to be put to death. Roman soldiers mocked him, beat him, and spat on his head. Then they took him to a hill in Jerusalem, nailed him to a cross, and left him to die. The Gospels say that even in death, Jesus showed a love few people could understand. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," he said. That evening, Jesus was buried in a tomb cut in a rock. His disciples, terrified for their own lives, fled into hiding. But according to the Gospels, 2 days after Jesus' crucifixion, some of his followers went to his tomb and found it empty. Soon afterward, the Gospels say Jesus appeared to his disciples, talked with them, and told them to carry on his work. Word of his resurrection began to spread. "He is alive," his followers joyously greeted each other. "Surely he is the Messiah." The apostles set to work. Headed by Peter, the apostle Jesus had chosen to lead them, Jesus' most devout followers set out to carry on his work. Their success was surprising. They started to teach, and people started to listen. Peter and the other disciples taught that Jesus was the Son of God. They said that he was indeed the Messiah, not one who wanted earthly power, but one who brought the message of God's love. The apostles and disciples told of miracles Jesus had performed. They spoke of his death on the cross and said that on the third day he had risen from the dead. They predicted that someday he would come again to complete the work he had begun. Some Jews believed the disciples' teachings, and the number of Christians began to grow. The early Jewish Christians came from many different backgrounds. Still, they all shared certain ideas. The most important was their belief in Jesus as the Son of God and the Savior of mankind. They believed that by following the teachings of Jesus and living as he had taught, people could be saved and enter heaven. These ideas became the basis of the Christian faith. And so, in a small corner of the Roman Empire, Christianity took root. Over time, as we shall see, it spread far and wide. And that's the end of the reading from page 396 to 403.